South Korean President Yoon is set to embark on his trip to San Francisco next week for the APEC summit to ramp up economic security. His overseas trips will also take him to the UK to meet King Charles. The U.S. has removed South Korea from its currency monitoring list on account of a fall in current account surplus. This could mean a higher level of credibility for Seoul on the global stage. Korea's current account stayed in the black for a fifth straight month in September on the back of a recovery in chip exports and cheaper import prices. It's November 8, 2023. This is News Center.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Min. We begin with a flurry of diplomacy scheduled for the South Korean leader until the year is up. Next week, President Yoon will attend the APEC summit in San Francisco, and his diplomatic engagements will also involve trips to London, Paris, and the Netherlands as he looks to increase South Korea's economic security and global leadership. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young has details.
President Yoon will look to increase Seoul's economic security and high-tech partnerships with like-minded countries, engaging in economic summitry in San Francisco and state visits to Europe. Yoon's office on Wednesday announced the President and the First Lady's upcoming trips, beginning with the Asia-Pacific Economic Partnership Summit hosted by the United States this year. Arriving in San Francisco on November 15th, Yoon will attend the APEC CEO Summit and the APEC Business Advisory Council Dialogue, among other sessions, laying out South Korea's role in global cooperation in overcoming the climate crisis, supporting the green transition, and countries vulnerable to climate change. He'll also emphasize the need for multilateral efforts to strengthen supply chains and establish digital ethical standards across the international community. The leader will also hold bilateral talks on the sidelines, as well as engage with the local Korean community and young people in high-tech industries. After returning to Seoul for the weekend, the first couple will head to London for a state visit, the first to be extended by King Charles III following his coronation. On November 21st, Yoon will meet King Charles at a welcoming ceremony to be followed by a luncheon before observing South Korea-related artifacts held at Buckingham Palace. After his royal engagements, the South Korean leader will pay his respects to Korean war veterans and at the Tomb of the Unknown at Westminster Abbey before delivering a speech at Parliament to set out the direction of bilateral relations going forward. Heading to No. 10 Downing Street the next day, Yoon will hold a bilateral summit with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak as the two countries produce the South Korea-UK Accord to strengthen their strategic partnership in trade, IT, cybersecurity, weapons, space and green industries, among other key sectors. Yoon will also attend various business-related events before he crosses over the English Channel to Paris, where he'll continue his appeal for South Korea's co-city of Busan to host the 2030 World Expo ahead of the decisive vote by member countries later this month. Marking his final overseas diplomacy of the year, Yoon will head to the Netherlands in mid-December, marking the first state visit to the country by a South Korean leader. During his two-day stay, he's expected to engage with the Dutch royal family, members of parliament, as well as key businesses in high-tech areas.
President Yoon's diplomatic streak comes against the backdrop of the growing US-China rivalry, the ongoing war in Ukraine, and the Israel-Hamas conflict, making his multilateral engagements all the more crucial amid efforts for global and economic security as Seoul looks to act as a global pivotal state.
The APEC summit will be a chance to strengthen South Korea's diplomacy as a responsible player in the global community, while the state visit to the UK aims to strengthen strategic cooperation, particularly with key friendly nations. President Yoon has assigned Seoul with the responsibility and role of contributing to world freedom, peace and prosperity whilst attending the NATO, ASEAN and G20 summits and the UN General Assembly earlier this year.
Yoon has held 142 summits so far this year with 93 nations, according to his office. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
President Yoon, hosting his Italian counterpart Sergio Mattarella at the Yongsan presidential office for a state visit, expressed his hopes for further cooperation as the two countries share the values of freedom, human rights, and the rule of law. The message was delivered before a summit between the two following a welcoming ceremony. President Matarala replied saying that cooperation needs to be extended beyond just the economy into culture, among other areas, as he invited President Yoon to visit Italy. The two also held an MOU signing ceremony, but details of this have yet to be released. The state visit comes against the backdrop of the next year, which marks 140th anniversary since diplomatic ties were established. South Korea and the U.S. military will discuss ways to bolster extended deterrence at their 55th Security Consultative Meeting to be held next week. The Ministry of National Defense announced that Minister Shin Won-sik and his U.S. counterpart Lloyd Austin will hold the annual meeting next Monday at the Defense Ministry compound in Yongsan Central, Seoul. This is their first round of talks since Shin's inauguration last month. Detailed plans to enhance extended deterrence, including the operation of the Nuclear Consultative Group, are expected to be at the top of their agenda. The foreign ministers of the Group of Seven have strongly condemned North Korea's repeated ballistic missile launches and arms transfers to Russia as a violation of UN Security Council resolutions. Japan's foreign ministry says this was announced as the G7 foreign ministers discussed Indo-Pacific issues in Tokyo on Wednesday. North Korea has recently provided Russia with more than 1 million artillery rounds to use in its war in Ukraine, with Pyongyang appearing to receive technological assistance for its upcoming military spy satellite launch. The top diplomats also reaffirmed the importance of engaging with China and the need to cooperate with Beijing on global challenges and areas of common interest. Over in the Middle East, as Israel intensifies its ground operations in Gaza, its forces are now engaged in urban warfare, which could lead to even worse casualties on both sides. Cho Soo-young has more.
About 10 days after the expansion of Israel's ground offensive in the Gaza Strip, its troops are now involved in urban warfare. Prime Minister Netanyahu made an official statement on Tuesday announcing that the Israel Defense Forces, after encircling Gaza City, was conducting urban operations inside in its month-long offensive against Hamas.
Gaza City is encircled. We are operating inside it. We are increasing pressure on Hamas every hour, every day. We have killed thousands of terrorists above ground and below ground.
Defense Minister Gallant also announced the same day that the IDF was now in the heart of the Gaza City. This is the biggest city in the central area of the Gaza Strip and is controlled by Hamas, which uses it as its main base. Gallant added IDF troops and combat engineers moved into the Gaza Strip from the north and south using armored vehicles and tanks. IDF spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said the IDF has hit more than 14,000 Hamas targets in the region, destroyed more than 100 tunnels, and captured 4,000 weapons which is said were hidden in civilian infrastructure. He reiterated Israel's stance of no ceasefire, despite international calls for a humanitarian pause in the fighting. With Israel's ground offensive in the Gaza Strip becoming official, the United States and Israel have expressed differences over the issue of Palestine governance after the war. Washington warned once more against the reoccupation of Gaza following Netanyahu's comments that Israel will have indefinite overall security responsibility there. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby said President Joe Biden still does not believe that the IDF reoccupying Gaza is good for the country. Kirby said while the U.S. agrees that it's impossible to go back to the pre-October 6th situation before Hamas launched its terrorist assault on Israel, the two allies don't have to agree on all operational strategies. However, the United States has repeated that it backs Israel's right to defend itself and will continue to provide support. Cho Soo-young, Arirang News.
The The U.S. has taken South Korea off its watch list of currency manipulating countries for the first time in 7 years on account of a fall in the current account surplus. Our Yoon has more on what this means.
South Korea has been removed from the U.S. government's monitoring list of foreign exchange policies after it had been on the list since April 2016. The U.S. Treasury Department released its semi-annual currency report on Tuesday, which reviewed the foreign exchange policies of its 20 major trading partners against 3 thresholds. They include a trade surplus with the U.S. of at least $15 billion, current account surplus of at least 3% of the country's GDP, and persistent net foreign currency purchases of at least 2% of GDP over a year. Countries that meet 2 of the 3 criteria are placed on the monitoring list to check for exchange rate manipulation against the dollar. South Korea and Switzerland were removed from the watch list, while China, Germany, Taiwan, Malaysia, and Singapore are among the 6 countries that remain. Vietnam was also put back on the list. The Treasury's report said no major trading partners appear to be manipulating the rate of exchange. South Korea was taken off the list mainly because the current account surplus fell, as exports plunged, and this impacts the current account surplus. One expert says the U.S. latest decision is both good and bad news for South Korea.
First of all, it shows the outside world that South Korea is now operating its foreign exchange market pretty fairly. So the positive aspect is that this increases Korea's credibility. But at the same time, because it means the current account surplus has significantly decreased, it also means that exports have not increased a lot.
The same expert also explained that because South Korea's current account surplus will not be significantly increased anytime soon, it's likely that it'll not be back on the list for the time being. 배은지, Arirang News.
South Korea posted another current account surplus in September thanks to some recovery in chip exports. Lower oil prices also play a role, making import prices cheaper. This trend is expected to continue for the rest of the year. Our economic correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
South Korea has managed to keep its current account in the black again in September. Preliminary data released by the Bank of Korea on Wednesday shows the country posted a current account surplus of $5.42 billion. This is the 5th straight month that a surplus was recorded, and it was even greater than in the month before. The surplus growth comes on the back of a recovery in exports and lowered global oil prices compared to the same period last year. The goods balance, which tracks imports and exports, saw a surplus of $7.42 billion last month, recording a surplus for the 6th consecutive month. The country exported over $55.6 billion worth of goods, an on-year decrease of 2.4% and the 13th straight on-year decline. By items, shipments of semiconductors are still below last year's figure, but the drop has been slowing down. On the other hand, the drop in imports was greater than that of exports, as the cost of importing raw materials dropped due to lower energy prices. A rise in dividend income from Korean subsidiaries located overseas also contributed to the current account surplus. Meanwhile, the services account, which tracks earnings and spending on overseas trips and transport, suffered an extended loss of $3.2 billion. Despite successive surpluses, the total surplus from January to last month is only around $16.6 billion, which is about 65% of the level for the same period last year. The BOK forecasts that the current account will continue to maintain a surplus in October and in the 4th quarter overall as well.
The surplus in the 4th quarter is expected to continue thanks to improvements in the semiconductor industry and strong car exports. But there's a chance the surplus may decrease compared to the 3rd quarter due to uncertainties in oil prices and potential increases in energy imports for winter heating.
He added that despite the uncertainties, the surplus for this year is expected to meet the bank's outlook of $27 billion. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
And the government is looking to ease the red tape, hindering investment initiatives by companies in hopes of facilitating the country's economic rebound. An oil plant and a K-pop concert hall are to benefit from deregulation. Shin Se-byuk has more.
South Korea's government has pledged to ease regulations to expedite the investment project of major corporations as a means of supporting the recent economic recovery trend. This is according to Finance Minister Cho Kyung-ho in an emergency economic meeting on Wednesday.
To further fuel the ongoing economic recovery, the government will expand investments and promote consumption with the goal of revitalizing domestic spending.
To do so, the government rolled out tailored deregulatory measures for 18 private projects worth a total of 46 trillion won, or over $35 billion. Measures include law revisions to help South Korean oil refining company S-Oil secure construction sites for a large-scale petrochemical plant in the southeastern city of Ulsan as part of the $7 billion Saudi Aramco-backed Shaheen project. The refiner has been facing difficulties in securing sites for plant facilities such as storage yards and parking lots due to an act on industrial cluster development. The Sphere K-pop Arena project is also to benefit from the newly announced plan. Currently, the U.S. company is looking to break ground on the venue before 2025 in Hanam, just south of Seoul. The expected feasibility study period, as of now, is over 42 months, but the government's fast-track administrative procedures will shorten it by half. Special rules on hazardous material management will shorten the construction time for battery factories and reduce cost for South Korean battery makers. LG Energy Solution, SK-On, and others are planning to invest nearly 2 trillion won, or over $1.5 billion over the next couple of years to build new facilities in the Chungcheongnam and Pukto provinces. Other projects on the government's support list include the establishment of a world-class arts center branch in the southeastern city of Busan and a new airport in the country's southeastern region. 신세벽, Arirang News.
The nation's biggest startup festival, COMEUP 2023, began today with more than half of the participating startups coming from overseas. Correspondent Lee Soo-jin also sat down with the Minister of SMEs and Startups to talk about how to help local startups go global.
South Korea is ready for its startups to make their mark. The country's biggest startup festival, COMEUP 2023, which will be held across 3 days, kicked off on Wednesday under the slogan, "We Move the World." Now in its 5th year, COMEUP, hosted by the Ministry of SMEs and Startups, is focusing on helping startups expand into global markets and providing them with various business opportunities. For the first time ever, most of the participating startups, 60% in fact, are from overseas. Continuing the global networking drive that began with President Yoon's state visit to the Middle East, global startups from 35 countries will be in attendance, including a 180-member delegation from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. To accommodate them all, there's a separate global zone set up, a new addition for this year. It stages company booths and country pavilions allow domestic startups to network and pitch to companies and officials from across the world. This year's COMEUP also features select local startups from various stages of development, giving them a platform to showcase their products. The festival also provides them with various opportunities for mentorship, networking, and investment. Arirang News sat down with the Minister of SMEs and Startups. She told us that this festival will highlight the strengths of South Korean startups.
South Korean startups are being recognized for their superior technology. For instance, in this year's CES, a quarter of the Innovation Award honorees were South Korean startups. In a digital era where new technology and businesses are needed, South Korean startups are already garnering much attention.
Also, this year's festival provides opportunities for startups to win what they need the most: capital.
At this year's COMEUP, there are 160 venture capitals from both Korea and abroad in attendance.
The minister added that she hopes that this festival will pave the way for more local startups to expand their business internationally, which will also help avoid business competition in the domestic market. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
President Yoon has nominated Cho Hee-dae to be the new Supreme Court Chief Justice. The 66-year-old has served in the role before from 2014 to 2020 and is known for having conservative views. Since then, Cho has been working as an endowed chair at Seongkyungwan University Law School. This decision came a month after the opposition-controlled National Assembly rejected the Yoon administration's previous pick for the Chief Justice Lee Kyun-yong, marking the first such rejection in 35 years. The next step in the process will be a confirmation hearing, but no time frame has been given in that regard. With a growing number of students from different backgrounds in Korea, the National Assembly passed a bill last month providing a legal basis for special educational support for students from migrant and multicultural backgrounds. Today, we talk about this issue. Our National Assembly correspondent Lee Si-hoo is here with us. Welcome, Si-hoo.
Hi, Jungmin.
So you had a chance to speak with some of the students themselves.
Right, I recently met with students from many different countries at a Korean-speaking contest held here in Seoul. Let's take a look.
15-year-old Sophia moved with her family from Kazakhstan to South Korea.
한국에 온 지 1년이 다 되어가지만 아직 한국 생활 많이 어려워요.
In less than a year, she learned enough Korean to enter a speaking contest hosted by the Migrant Youth Foundation's Rainbow Youth Center.
그러나 저는 지금 학생이니까 열심히 공부하고 학교에서 한국 친구들도 많이 사귀며 미래의 꿈도 이루고 싶어요.
Nationwide, there are over 168,000 kindergarten, elementary, or middle school students with migrant or multicultural backgrounds. This is over 3% of all students. For these students, South Korea is implementing new educational programs.
By April next year, South Korea must come up with specific measures to support multicultural students' education. This comes as part of the revision to the Elementary and Secondary Education Act passed by the National Assembly in early October.
The legislation requires local governments to create special educational programs for multicultural students and also provides a legal basis for related research by the Education Ministry. Lawmaker Kwon Eun-hee, a member of the Assembly's Education Committee, proposed the legislation.
If the existing multicultural education was based on the understanding of Korea and was conducted in one-way consideration, I think we should now move forward in the direction of mutual respect.
Kwon suggests a way of learning that can highlight students' strengths.
We urgently need to establish dual language education in our system of multicultural education.
Lawmaker Kim Chul-min, the president of the Assembly's Education Committee, also underlines the need to teach both the language and culture.
In these global times, multicultural students have the advantage of knowing the culture and language of Korea, and also where they were born and where their parents are from.
And helping them is the duty of the Korean government.
For these students to grow into competitive talent in Korea in the future, I think we need to provide them with an education system that helps them to adapt to Korean society and also know their culture at the same time.
The Education Ministry is set on establishing foundational Korean language courses by region, as well as offering special scholarships for multicultural talents.
So, Si-hoo, South Korea must come up with specific measures by April.
That's right. The Education Ministry is trying to reflect these voices by taking a more holistic approach. Listen in.
We've previously taken the view that they're somewhat underprivileged in our society, that they're the children who need special help. But the biggest change now is that we're setting our policy based on the perspective that these students are part of our community and we're all growing together.
All right, thank you for the report. Keep us posted.
Thank you.
Warmer temperatures are in the forecast tomorrow. Lows will start up at 8 degrees Celsius in Seoul, but do expect a rise in daytime readings. Other regions will also see a gap in daily temperatures. The rise in daytime readings will lead to unstable atmospheric conditions. Starting tomorrow daytime, scattered outbreaks of rainfall are in store for most parts of the country. Western regions, including here in Seoul and parts of Gangwon province, will see around 5 millimeters. Jeju Island can expect about 5 to 20. In the meantime, gusty winds are in the forecast for all the coastlines. Winds will be gusting as fast as 10 to 16 meters per second. This will be conducive in creating high waves. For those fishing or boating, make sure to refer to the latest weather forecast. Morning temperatures in Seoul will be starting off at 8 degrees. Chuncheon will be cold at 4. Highs will be jumping significantly for the daytime. Seoul will get up to 17 degrees, Daejeon 19, Busan will make it to 21 degrees. Southern regions will see rain until Friday, and on Sunday, lows will be dropping to the negative territory. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is News Center for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.